This is Caring for Kids on News Talk 760 WJR, presented by the Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation. And here's your host, President and CEO of the Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation, Larry Burns.
Thanks, Mark, and hello, everyone, and welcome to Caring for Kids, where we discuss a variety of issues concerning the health and the wellness of children locally, regionally, and nationally. Tonight we have a great lineup, started with Debora Matthews, President and CEO of the Children's Center, James Macon, Executive Clinical Director at Centria Health, and Garlin Gilchrist, Lieutenant Governor candidate for the state of Michigan. It's all coming up next right here on Caring for Kids on the great voice of the Great Lakes, News Talk 760 WJR.
It's Caring for Kids with Larry Burns.
Welcome back, everyone. Caring for Kids. I'm Larry Burns, your host. And our first guest in the studio tonight is Debora Matthews. Debora received a Bachelor of Business Administration degree from the University of Michigan's Ross School of Business. She then began her career at Plant Moran, where she conducted audits for nonprofits and municipalities. Debora worked as the CFO of many organizations over a 25-year span and then joined the Children's Center as a finance director in the 1980s. Debora also volunteered at the centers as the center's treasurer and served on the board for 17 years before being appointed to the president and CEO position in 2006. Debora, welcome to Caring for Kids.
Thank you, Larry. I am delighted to be here tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great to see you, and great career that you've had, Plant Moran, and doing audits and volunteering, and now running a great organization.
Yeah, that's for me part of my mission in life is to make sure that the work I do with the talents that I have contribute to society. So that's always been one of the goals that I've had.
Absolutely, and you're reaching those goals every day.
Thank you.
So for those of us, or those of our listeners, because I know very well about the Children's Center, for our listeners who aren't quite familiar with the Children's Center, give us an overview of your great organization.
Thank you. Well, the Children's Center will be celebrating our 90th year next year, and we are one of the leading providers in this region, particularly Wayne County and the city of Detroit, providing mental health services, behavioral health services for children and their families.
And so we're keenly interested in mental health now, our foundation, which is evolving, as you know, into a community foundation since we're not embedded in the hospital anymore. And one of our main areas of interest is mental health. So we've partnered with you in the past, and I know we'll partner even more in the future. And so tell us some of the current things going on at the center that you want our listeners to know about as it relates to initiatives, advocacy, and other things going on.
Well, our mission is to help children and families shape their own futures. And that's very key for us because we realize that, of course, children's our future. And if we don't, as a society, take care of what's going on with kids, then we've hurt ourselves overall. Within the city of Detroit, there are many, many children who are underserved or unserved in the area of mental health services. And our goal is to get rid of that stigma that unfortunately folks have had about any kind of person, particularly children who need mental health services. They may have behavioral problems, emotional challenges. They may have suffered trauma and abuse. And it's our job to do what we can to offer them the healing and the hope so that they can thrive as a young person.
And then eventually as an adult.
As an adult, exactly. If we don't take care of them now, then they end up unfortunately transitioning to an adult system, and many of them just aren't prepared for that at age 18. And so our goal is to first, let's get rid of that stigma. It is okay to have a mental health challenge, just like a physical health issue.
Absolutely.
And we've got to normalize that so that folks understand that it is not anything wrong with saying that you have an emotional difficulty or other type of mental health illness. And we've got to be able to address that as early as possible. Our goal at the Children's Center is to use evidence-based practices, those things that have been tried and true nationally through research, and we know it works. So the sooner we can get many of those interventions going for kids and families, the better off they have of getting even beyond some of those diagnoses. Some people aren't comfortable with thinking that you diagnose a child, but that's okay because that's a starting point. And as long as we really wrap the right kind of services around whatever that issue is, they have a very, very good chance of getting beyond that and then being able to become a productive, stable adult. So that is our goal. And our goal also is to look at a child from a holistic standpoint. They come in with a challenge. Maybe the school recommended that they go somewhere like the Children's Center. And they come in with that challenge, but that doesn't define who they are, and it certainly is not all they need. Oftentimes, their families need other types of supports, even though the child may have a behavior problem. How's the schooling going? How's the housing? Do the families need support in the area of food? Are they insecure in that area? So those types of things are what we look at from a holistic standpoint. How's their physical health? Because what you find is, unfortunately, reports have shown that people with a mental illness die 25 years or sooner than the average individual. And we've got to do something about that. And part of that solution is attacking those issues sooner and integrating the care that we give them for mental health with their physical health care, their schooling, their education, their housing. All of those come into play because children are a whole person. It's not just about that horrible behavior. The other thing is that we've got to be careful as adults and others that we don't talk about kids in the inappropriate way. All of us have heard of that bad kid, that bad seed, that misbehaving child. There's usually something going on, and we need to pay closer attention to that and make sure we don't allow other kids to bully those kids, and that we as adults don't talk about them in such a negative way. And to me, that's the worst stigma of all, is what other people say about you when you have those level of challenges. And if you think about it, all of us have people in our families who have had some level of mental health challenge. We may not have recognized it as so. So it's really very, very common, particularly with our city and our county, in which there are folks challenged with poverty and other types of trauma that's happened, and crime and all those kinds of things. So it really is something that should be thought of as being normal, okay, and let's just deal with what we see, start at that point, and walk toward a recovery and a healing for these individuals.
Yes, absolutely. So very important. We're talking with Debora Matthews, CEO of the Children's Center, a partner of the Children's Hospital Michigan Foundation. And so, Debora, I mentioned that mental health certainly is one of our new focus areas. And as you know, research has shown that having a healthy male influence in the lives of children, particularly those that may be at risk, can have a very positive impact on their development. And one of the innovative programs that you offer that our foundation is proud to support is the Fatherhood Initiative.
Yes.
And so tell our listeners a little bit about that, please.
Yes. We learned long ago, of course, of all the years that we've dealt with children, that it is very critical, the male involvement in their road to recovery. And as a provider of the mental health authority within our county, we've gotten a level of funding to support this overall county fatherhood initiative. And what that's about is realizing that children really have healthier lives when fathers are involved, male figures are involved, and it helps them even be happier, dealing with, better able to deal with their behavior issues, emotional issues, even the academic issues. We find that certainly fathers being involved helps support that. So what we do is, first off, start with fathers and male caregivers with the level of respect that they deserve, because oftentimes they are not respected, especially if they are not married to the mom in the family. You know, there's this stigma, there's this thought about them being deadbeats and that kind of thing. And what we found is that if we start with this level of respect with these fathers and help support their being involved with the children in an appropriate way, that the outcomes for those kids are just so much greater than what we've seen with the opposite. And so for us, it's about training dads and helping facilitate how they can be more involved, giving them the information they need about their child so they can be supportive of the treatment plan that's needed for that child.
Right, and even educate them about the stigma that they might have.
Absolutely.
About their child.
They should not be ashamed if the child has a challenge.
Right.
And, you know, as adults and parents in particular, you know, sometimes they don't understand that aspect of it.
People are very willing to say they have a cancer or something, but mental health is not. And so regarding advocacy, that's another big role for us at the Children's Hospital Michigan Foundation. How can the average person advocate and try to rid this stigma of mental health? What do you recommend?
Well, I think first we have to think about how we talk about mental health. And, you know, we don't need to name people who have challenges as crazy, nutty, psycho, all those things that, you know, we often hear people talk about. So it starts with how we think about it and how we talk about it. And we have to make sure that conversations about mental wellness is top of the mind, just like your physical wellness. Yeah. You know, we know we have problems in our society with obesity and asthma and other things that folks understand as, okay, that's kind of okay. But the mental challenges, the emotional difficulties, those kinds of things we've got to think of in the same way. So that means we've got to teach our children that mental health challenges are just like any other type of illness that they may be dealing with, and recognizing that these problems are common and that every family in America deals with it. And so
some way, some form.
Yeah, and we cannot bully. You know, unfortunately, we have a program for children living with autism, and they are some of the most bullied children because of some of the behaviors that they display. And it's important that we teach our young kids and all the way up, teenagers and adults, that we shouldn't be laughing and making fun, you know, at folks who need help in that way, particularly children. So for us, getting rid of this stigma, we have this Stop the Stigma campaign, in which we're really asking folks to come on board with it, to take a picture of our pin that we have, put it on the social media.
Yeah, we'll do that.
And
will do that.
Yeah, help folks to understand that this is okay.
This is okay.
Let's just deal with it.
Let's talk about it.
Exactly. Let's talk about it.
Well, thank you, Debora Matthews, CEO of the Children's Center. We appreciate our partnership. We appreciate your great leadership at the Children's Center, and we look forward to being partners for a long, long time.
We thank you so much as well, Larry. This is a community issue.
It is.
It is not an issue that one organization or one person can deal with, but we all have to come together, and advocate for our kids. We really believe at the Children's Center that as you heal the issues that kids are dealing with, you're healing Detroit, you're healing our region, and thus our state.
Right.
So it's our job to do it, and I'm happy to be with you in partnership and making that happen.
Wonderful. Yep.
Thank you so much, Larry.
Thank you, Debora Matthews, the CEO of the Children's Center. And coming up next, we're going to hear from James Macon, Executive Clinical Director of Centria Healthcare. When Caring for Kids continues, here on the great voice of the Great Lakes, News Talk 760 WJR.
Welcome back to Caring for Kids on WJR, presented by the Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation.
Welcome back, everyone. Caring for Kids. Your host, Larry Burns, here. And in the studio is James Macon. James has been working in the field of applied behavior analysis, ABA, for 15 years, starting when he was an undergraduate student at Western Michigan University. Go Broncos. His passion for using behavioral science to improve lives led him to study, practice, and work throughout many different areas of behavioral analysis, including early intensive behavioral intervention, behavioral reduction, consultation in schools and residential facilities, among other areas. Today, James is the Executive Clinical Director of Centria Healthcare and founder of the Applied Behavior Analysis Learning Lab, an educational blog and podcast. James, welcome to Caring for Kids.
Great. Thanks for having me here today.
Well, that's an awful lot of stuff the last 15 years, so you've been a busy person.
I'm older than I appear.
Indeed. Well, you look great. So tell our listeners a little bit about Centria Healthcare and the services you provide, along then with your specific role.
Well, Centria's mission is to empower the lives of our kids and families to become the best that they can achieve. So really it's about finding out different paths for success for our kids. You know, really what we want to do is make sure that our families and clients have access to services no matter where they are so that they can reach their potential.
And one of the things that we're becoming more and more focused on in our Children's Hospital Michigan Foundation is mental health. And included in that, we include autism as part of that. And so we're trying to get more supportive and more involved in the community supporting autism and families and children with autism. And I know it's a seems to be a hotbed topic of late. And what are some of today's biggest challenges regarding autism that you and your colleagues are seeing?
Yeah, great question. So the biggest challenge by far we face in the autism community is early detection and intervention. So the CDC, Centers for Disease Control, publishes a report every 2 years. And what we've seen is the prevalence of autism increase with each report. So we're at nationally 1 in 59 children had a diagnosis of autism by age 8.
1 in 59.
1 in 59.
And do you think that is an increase in children with autism or just better identification that these children are suffering from that, or both?
Well, it's probably a bit of both. What I can tell you is we're much better at detecting autism than we were decades ago. So we have better screening, better tools, and there's just more awareness around autism. But what we haven't seen is an increase in the age of our kids being diagnosed. And what I mean is really what we want to do is by 18 months or 24 months, we want to be able to detect autism and diagnose it so we can start treatment. But we're not seeing screening or diagnosis occurring until the age of 4, which means we're missing out on about 2 years of critical treatment.
So, and we're talking with James Macon, Executive Clinical Director of Centria Healthcare, talking about autism, early detection. And so for our listeners, parents, grandparents, people that are just interested in helping, what are some of the things that parents should be looking for so they don't wait until 4 years old to be diagnosed?
Yeah, great question. So autism is defined by a core set of symptoms. And what we're looking for are deficits in communication, play, and social skills. So oftentimes this looks like failure to make eye contact, a regression in language, or just a general non-engagement with people in the room or objects or other stimuli. So one way you might see this or kind of keep an eye out is if a typical, your child is developing typical and all of a sudden you start seeing a regression in language, or you start seeing eye contact disappear. That's really some of the first signs that, hey, maybe there's something else I should be doing, something I can screen for, and just making sure that we get screened for autism.
Great, very important. And so as it relates to Centria Healthcare, so what if I'm a parent, I see some of these disturbing things that concern me, how do I contact you or your colleagues at Centria?
Well, what I'll say first and foremost is Centria is 100% committed to providing best practices in applied behavior analysis, or ABA.
ABA.
And ABA is the gold standard for the treatment of autism. It has the broadest endorsement across the medical and educational communities, including the American Academy of Pediatrics, the U.S. Surgeon General's Office, the Centers for Disease Control, the American Association on Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities, and the Autism Society, just to name a few. And not all therapies are created equal. So one of the things we've tried to do to differentiate ourselves is become accredited by the Behavioral Health Center of Excellence, which it's one thing for me to say that, hey, we're good behavior analysts, we're a good company, but this accreditation is coming from a third party that goes in and makes sure that we're adhering to the best practices known in our field. But if someone does want to get more information, Centria has a dedicated page for parents. They can reach out, they can get more information, and really get some answers. A lot of our parents, if you just find out that your son or daughter has a diagnosis of autism, it can be a very scary thing. And you jump on Google and you find out all these different horror stories or questions or different therapies, quote unquote, that exist. And unfortunately, there's just a lot of misinformation. So having staff there with us, with Centria, who can provide answers and help guide parents along the way is really, really important to help give parents the tools that they need to succeed.
Excellent. Great information. Go to your website, and appreciate you being here on Caring for Kids. Appreciate the work that you're doing in our community and look forward to staying in touch. James Macon.
Thanks, Larry. Appreciate
it very much. That's James Macon, Executive Clinical Director of Centria Healthcare. And coming up next, we're going to hear from a candidate for the Michigan Lieutenant Governor position, and that's in Garlin, Gilchrist, when our Caring for Kids continues here on the great voice of the Great Lakes. News Talk 760 WJR.
Welcome back to Caring for Kids on WJR. Presented by the Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation. Once again, here's Larry Burns.
Welcome back, everybody. Larry Burns here, Caring for Kids, in the studio. We've had all our guests in the studio tonight, so that's great. Is my friend Garlin Gilchrist. He is a candidate now for the Michigan Lieutenant Governor position. Let me tell you a little bit about Garlin. He is a dad, first and foremost. He's an organizer, he's an innovator, and a Detroiter who has dedicated his career to fixing broken systems and getting things done. Garlin spent 4 years as a software engineer at Microsoft, where he helped build SharePoint into the fastest growing product in the company's history. That's impressive enough. Garlin also served as social media manager for the 2008 Obama campaign in Washington. That was very successful, where he helped launch a national text message program to recruit volunteers, which I have to say is legendary now in the social media world. So that's pretty cool that you led that. And as national campaign director at MoveOn.org, Garlin spearheaded a campaign to expand Medicaid in various states, including our very own Michigan. And as Detroit's first ever director of innovation and emerging technology, Garlin created an app for Detroiters to report problems where they're facing every day, like broken fire hydrants, potholes. We have many of those, and broken streetlights. And Garlin now prepares himself for a big campaign race, as he is running for the position of Michigan Lieutenant Governor. And so, Garlin, welcome to Caring for Kids.
Larry, it's great to be here with you.
Good to see you. We first met in Macon 2 years ago.
It was last year. We feel like old friends, though.
Exactly. So it's good to see you again. And
your bow tie looks great.
Thank you very much. And I've seen you in a bow tie, and you look even better. So thanks for being here. I know you're very busy. So a number of important categories, whether it's health, education, or poverty, the children of Michigan are falling behind children in other states. And I think most people would agree to that. And what do you see as the biggest issues facing our children in Michigan, and what we might be able to do to improve that? Being a dad yourself and now running for Lieutenant Governor.
Well, Gretchen Whitmer and I, as parents, that's a very important identity to us. So we think a lot about not only our children, but the children across the state of Michigan, and want to make sure that when we are making policy decisions and that when we're going to bat and fighting for families, that we have those kids as priorities at heart. How do we create an infrastructure and environment that just enables them to be the most imaginative people they can be. That means that they have schools that are invested in and professionals who are respected at work and who have fair pay and have the resources they need to help our children be successful. Making sure that the infrastructure of the schools themselves, the pipes that they're getting water from, and that the school buildings themselves are not crumbling. Making sure the state prioritizes that investment, which means that we cannot take money from K-12 education and use it to pay for other things, whether it's higher education or just other parts of the general fund budget. We need to reestablish that firewall, and that's one of the key priorities for Gretchen and I. But also making sure that once they get through high school, once they get through college, hopefully at the University of Michigan like I went to.
Or Central Michigan where I went.
Fair enough. My parents are Central Michigan grads,
there you go.
All good.
Go Chips. Fire up Chips.
Once they finish, they don't make the choice that I did. I made a tough choice after I finished engineering school in Michigan. I decided, or I felt that I needed to go to a different part of the country to build my career and build my future. I want my children and every child in Michigan to realize that there is a path to a high-wage skill and a high-wage job and a career here in Michigan. And I want them to make that choice if that's what they want.
Excellent. Well, I support that. So one of the things that our foundation now is people are learning that we're evolving into a community foundation for children and supporting community-based organizations like the Boys and Girls Club and other organizations. One of the things that we're involved in now is a new foundation, which is the Jamie Daniels Foundation. It's about opioid education and trying to stop this crisis. And so what are your thoughts about that and what Michigan faces with the opioid crisis?
Well, Gretchen and I believe that it is worth declaring a state of emergency to respond to this opioid epidemic. And really that state of emergency will enable us to prioritize and unlock resources in a way that is really unprecedented. So many communities have been ravaged by drug addiction and all of the sort of byproducts of drug addiction, whether it's, Black communities in Detroit and Flint and Benton Harbor to rural communities who are really on the front lines of this opioid epidemic. So we want to really respond to this with the full faith and resources of the state government by declaring a state of emergency, by making sure we're prioritizing and having legislation that we are putting together and that we're working with the legislature to make sure we're not putting undue limitations on people who actually need pain medication.
Right.
Making sure though that we are able to curb and protect against the abuse that's a symptom of addiction. And the last thing that we need to do is make sure we don't criminalize addiction. One of the reasons why just the sort of federal war on drugs was such a failure, because it really criminalized addiction in a way that had really disparate impact on different communities, that meant people like in Black communities here in Detroit. We want to make sure that doesn't happen here with this opioid epidemic. Right. And so being thoughtful about that from the state level, from a policy perspective, is something Gretchen and I take very seriously. Good.
And we're talking with Garlin Gilchrist, candidate for Michigan Lieutenant Governor. And you mentioned that, and we're partnered with Judge Linda Davis. I don't know if you're familiar with FAN, Families Against Narcotics, and they started something that's called Hope Not Handcuffs that many police departments across the state have implemented, including Ferndale. Our Dave Coulter, who works with us, is the mayor of Ferndale, and he says that has really helped so that people who have addiction problems can go into a police station, declare that, not be questioned, but be helped immediately. And so I think that's the type of program that you might support.
Absolutely. We need to wrap our arms around people, not lock them up.
Exactly.
And that just we don't need to feed people into prison. We need to try to prevent people from coming into contact with the criminal justice system in that way.
Yes. And so as Lieutenant Governor, what would be your vision of, our sole really purpose of existing is helping children and their families to make sure they're on a pathway to successful, rewarding, and healthy lives. Since we're not embedded in the hospital anymore, we're more about wellness and education and trying to make sure that children and their families are headed in the right direction. And so we love to partner with organizations. And as Lieutenant Governor and with your view of how that might work in your leadership?
Well, one of the ways that Gretchen and I have described this is through a phrase I call enabling infrastructure that enables imagination. And so that means healthy and productive environments at school. It also means just the general environment that our kids exist in. So whether that's making sure we have great park infrastructure, that the kids have beautiful and vibrant, state parks to go to and play in and experience nature and experience wildlife, and to just be physically active and engaged. Making sure that we have safe streets and safe roads, making sure that we have a healthy mix of transportation so they can make healthy choices about how they want to get around in Michigan. That's why investments in things like regional transit are important for quality of life, not just for adults who need to get to work, but for children who live in this area, in the state of Michigan. Right. We believe that having infrastructure that just takes a holistic approach to quality of life will make quality of life better for children, both children of all ages. And when we are enabling families, we're enabling people to be healthy and to make these choices and to be able to do whatever they want to do in Michigan, that will return the state of Michigan to one where people want to come to and where people want to stay in, rather than needing to go somewhere else to build their life and build their career.
Great. Thank you. Well, Garlin, thank you very much for being with us tonight. Thanks for all you've done in your career, and I wish you the best of luck in your race for Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you very much, Larry.
And it's always good to see you and your smiling face. So
my pleasure.
I appreciate it very much. That was Garlin Gilchrist. He is Lieutenant Governor candidate for our great state of Michigan. And stay tuned. I'm going to have some updates on the foundation when we return.
It's Caring for Kids with Larry Burns.
Well, that was a great show tonight with 3 wonderful guests doing good work in the community, and one hoping to do even more for the state of Michigan. So a couple things I wanted to tell you. The foundation, the injury prevention, our appeal. You might receive something in the mail, so if you do, please read that and consider supporting us. It's one of our focus areas. And September is also Pediatric Cancer Awareness Month, so we'll be involved in that. And then we have a new program that's going to be around for the year, and that's called Shop for a Cause. And so customers can visit the Clinton Township and Birmingham Alex and Ani store locations, Alex and Ani. Shop for a Cause on September 27th, meaning if you support them, they support us. So that would be a win-win situation. And Families Against Narcotics, also known as FAN, will be holding its annual Fall Fest on October 9th. And now it's time for our Little Champion of the Month. And this portion of Caring for Kids is sponsored by Northwestern Mutual. The Little Champion program honors children who have overcome major obstacles in their young lives and continue to tackle those challenges with a smile each and every day. This month, our Little Champion feature highlights the Hilliard family quadruplets. 4. Emmett, Charlotte, Patrick, and Riley from Grosse Pointe, Michigan. Born weighing approximately 1 pound each and spending the first several months of their lives in the neonatal intensive care unit, these quads endured several procedures and medical complications. Today, all 4 children are patients of the Children's Hospital of Michigan, where they are receiving the best care in the world on their road to a total health and wellness and wonderful lives. So congratulations to the Hilliard quadruplets, this month's Little Champion feature. For more information on the Little Champion program and how you can nominate a child, visit chmfoundation.org, and it's easy to find. Well, one of the things we love about our foundation is our internship program. We have a great partnership with Wayne State University and some other universities, but primarily Wayne State University College of Business. And our newest intern is William Archibald, and he just joined us, and he's in the studio. So Will, as we call him, tell us a little bit about your background and your major at Wayne State.
So I'm currently a senior at Wayne State University, going into the marketing management and finance program, hopefully graduating by the end of the year.
We'll make sure that happens. Yes. So you've been an intern for a couple of weeks. Have you enjoyed it so far?
Absolutely.
Yeah. What's your favorite thing about Wayne State University?
Currently, the new business school has been outstanding.
The building is awesome. We haven't been there yet, but our friend Steve Townsend is going to give us a tour soon. So, well, if there's people out there that want to do an internship with our foundation, just let us know. And people like Will, you'll get to work with him. And so, what are you hoping to learn from this? Last question. How to do radio interviews?
Communications mostly. Kind of how to reach out, how to really interact with the people you're trying to get in touch with and communicate.
And find a job.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good. Well, we'll help you with all of those. So you have a bright future. That's Will Archibald, our newest intern from Wayne State University. I want to thank you for joining us on Caring for Kids. We're delighted that you listened. Our next Caring for Kids will be October 23rd at 7 p.m. on WJR. In the meantime, take care indeed.
Caring for Kids on WJR has been presented by the Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation.